Hey, sports fans. Appreciate you checking out the Sportsline Podcast on our CHCH and Parrot Media platforms. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Folks, the Olympics were completed just days ago, and ever since then, the Canadian sports world has literally exploded with controversial takes and opinion on social media. Now, when these kind of sports discussions become major talking points, I like to bring in a fella that I consider a voice of reason, or at least a moderator. He is a Spectator from Hamilton, a columnist, news and sports, Scott Radley. You've been here before. I don't even need to introduce all the stuff that you've done. First of all, how are you?
I am fantastic. Just back a couple of weeks from I planned a year and a bit ago that my wife and I were going away. Didn't look on the schedule, so we missed the first week of the Olympics. We were on a cruise ship, and they did not even have a channel that you could see.
Oh.
So the first week of the Olympics, didn't see a second of it. And then come home and it's like, oh, well, we're not doing great. This is not the own the podium era. We're anyway, it was lovely to be away and to come home, and it got a little better when we got home.
Yes, it did.
I like to believe we brought some good fortune.
Yes, you did. And good on you. They're getting away a little bit from this, what has been just one of the worst winters we've had in many years. Look, I have so much to talk to you about, and I know we're going to dig in pretty good here on some topics that have really, I think, sparked the nation in terms of news and sports, and that's why you're so good at this stuff, and I lean on you. Okay, let's start with the medal count. You talk about the medals and how we did there. 21 medals. 5 golds, to the point where I made a comment here on CHCH News at 6 that I was disappointed, and there were people that criticized me, and that's fine. That's fine. I offered.
Why are they critical? Because I mean, saying you're disappointed. Yeah. What so everybody tried hard and we're supposed to be happy.
I didn't want to fire back at those people, but I just have expectations. Now, the Summer Olympics to me would be a little different. Winter Olympics, I expect more than 21 medals. CEO of the Canadian Olympic Committee, David Shoemaker, he went to the podium the day after. He talked about the fact that funding,
without owning the podium.
Without owning the podium. He talked about funding on the private sector being outstanding, maybe one of the best ever, but that the money coming in from the government hasn't changed in 20 years, and that for our athletes to improve, as we look at some of the numbers here over the last 5 Olympics, and these are the 5 Winter Olympics, folks. We have well over 200 athletes competing, which puts us in the top 5, and in some years top 5, and in some years top 10. And with the exception of the 29 medals won in South Korea, I believe that was, and of course we had the one good year in 2010 in Vancouver where we got 14 golds. I don't know. Are those numbers good enough to you?
So, look, it's a tricky question, and we're not going to dodge around it, but it's a tricky question because of this. We understand where the Canadian economy is right now, and we understand that for anybody to say, I think it's a really important thing and a priority that we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on elite athletes to win medals at the Olympics when we have people who are hungry and we have, people who need social assistance and things like that. That's a hard argument to make. It really is. And I get that. And so I'm not of the exact same opinion I was back, again, in 2010 or whatever, when Own the Podium was a thing. We got to do better. We're hosting. We've got to put on a good show. But I think there is room to be somewhere between where we are and where we were. I don't think it has to be all that we were or none that we are now. I think we can find a middle ground. And, the problem with simply washing it away completely and saying, we don't need to spend any money, it's just sports. It's just sports. I always go back to 2010. You can go on YouTube right now. You can look it up and find it. And there's a couple of cool collections. There's about a 15-minute video of the overtime and subsequent moments after Sidney Crosby scored the golden goal. Across this country, we were united and celebrating the same thing. People in the streets, honking horns, huge parties, bars, houses. It's a series of videos, just thousands, millions of people celebrating. there is something valuable about having a common thing to celebrate, to feel good about yourself, to feel good about your country, to feel good about your countrymen, to feel patriotic. Those are good things. And I don't think they are worthless, which is what some people who would argue don't spend money on sports, only spend it on the important things. I don't think that's the right answer either. Maybe don't spend as much as we once did, but you can't expect athletes to go compete for us against people who are getting tons of funding, not do well, and then everyone go, oh, we suck. and we don't feel good about stuff, and then be surprised. There is value in that good feeling. There is value in that good feeling.
I'm embarrassed in some ways when I look at the numbers and we'll use this past Winter Olympics, okay? You have our country, which is about 42 million people currently in that pocket. And you have a Norway.
Norway's amazing.
Norway's like 8. And they doubled us in medals. How is that possible? Like, why? We have Keaton Bruggeling, a Hamilton Tiger Cat, who is in the bobsled team. We had him on our morning show most recently. I had him on the podcast most recently. And I was alarmed when he told me that we're using an old German boat, like the four-man bobsled, that's like 8 years old. Like, we can't come up with something on our own, a great big Canada. We have to rely on a winning
second-hand,
second-hand. We got to go to the used car shop to get to get our own bobsled. Like, what's happening here?
I went to Haldeman Motors to find a bobsled. It's only got 2,600 miles on it.
It's all right. Gently used.
Yeah, gently used, all downhill.
Like, what's happening here?
Again, I think that the argument has seemed to have coalesced around this idea that we either have to spend an absolute fortune or let them find their own way. And there has got to be middle ground in there and here's the part that frustrates me. There is a guy who is the sport minister for this country, a guy named Adam Van Couverden, who benefited from government sponsorship as part of his success. If anyone should be there screaming behind in the cabinet room that, you know what, these people deserve. Now, maybe he is unsuccessfully. Maybe he is, though. But we need to have a champion, and I don't mean a gold medal champion. I mean a champion for the cause back there saying there's got to be at least a middle ground here where we can support them, and then they can find the private sector financing, but we're not leaving them, as you just described, falling behind and having to use secondhand equipment. That is not fair to them. Especially with what you said, especially with the expectations that people do have.
Yeah, I mean, we're sorry. Maybe I'm gonna go somewhere. Maybe I shouldn't. Or G7, we're one of the top countries in the world.
We're struggling now.
In terms of population, in terms of what we can produce, how we support ourselves. And yes, every country has issues. Every country deals with poverty. These are all things that are happening out there. But countries like the United States, Mexico, Norway, we just talked about, Germany, they are finding money for their athletes that they don't have to have second and third jobs.
Now, there is,
to break up their training.
There is an irony in this, though, and you put up those medal standings, and we kind of say, oh, this was not a very successful Olympics. Had Canada won women's hockey and men's hockey, it doesn't matter what else happened, it would have been a successful Olympics. That's the way it always is. Do you tell me, in 2010 in Vancouver, we had our best ever gold medals. What was the number? 14. There it is, 14. If we had won 0 gold medals, but Sidney Crosby still scores the golden goal after the women had won the Olympic hockey, would anyone say that was a bad Olympics? We would have been fine with it.
No, because we won the sport that we it's the one of the only sports that we still think we're the best in. And that would have been okay.
And we are still right there among the best. But that, for whatever reason, that sport is worth 10 times the medals anything else is. It just is. Like, for us to win, if we had won the men's hockey compared to, I don't know, a short track speed skating medal. I don't want to disparage short track speed skaters. That's not what this is about.
I know what you're saying here.
But when a short track speed skater wins a medal, I don't think there's too many people driving around the cities of Canada honking their horns and waving Canadian flags, unless you're in the short track speed skating community. when a hockey team does it, we are. It is a different, and there are very few events where we get that excited. When
maybe that's a problem.
Well, when we won our very first gold medal in Vancouver on Canadian soil, that was a very big deal.
Mm-hmm. It took us 9 days to get a gold medal.
But there are certain sports that just, whether we like it or not, that count more than other sports in the public consciousness.
For sure. I'm glad you brought up the hockey here, because our Canadian women and men's hockey team lost gold medal games to the mighty United States of America. There's so many places we can go here, but I'll start with this. Which team should be more concerned, the men's team or the women's team?
The women's.
About being winning silver.
The women's by far. The women's by far, because I agree with Nathan McKinnon, even though it was a little bit of sour grapes. Canada was by far the better team on the ice in the men's gold medal game. By far. It was. Nathan McKinnon will have that open net that he had 100 times in the NHL this season and probably doesn't miss one. Connor McDavid had a breakaway. Celebrini had a breakaway. They should have won that game handily. So I don't think you look at the men's program and go, oh, they've really fallen off. They were the better team. They had bad luck. They didn't execute. They lost. And full marks to the Americans, but there's no concern. And you've got Matthew Schaefer from Hamilton coming up, and Celebrini's 19, and you've got lots of young guys, and McDavid is not old.
Hopefully we got a young goaltender coming up too.
Well, that's a whole other topic.
Right.
But the women's team is the bigger issue because it was an older team. There are young players, and so I don't think that there are young players that were left at home. I don't think that the issue is that we don't have any young up-and-coming Canadian stars to keep up with the Americans. My concern with the women's program is more about who's making the decisions on some of these. You see the Americans going young and fast, and we go old and experienced but slower. They played very well in their gold medal game, and they too could have won that game. But how many games did they play in the challenge?
They've now lost 8 consecutive games to the United States.
Every one of the games in that year, 12 months period leading up to that game, they got shellacked. So their best game, yes, they played a terrific gold medal game, still lost, but they played a great gold medal game. But there was every reason to think this team was not constructed properly. So my concern, again, is not even with the players or the development. It's just with who's making the calls on this, and do we have the right people making the decisions for who should be there? But if you were to put together a Canadian team, women's team today, and redo it, looking at how it all played out, and say we're going to go younger and faster and less experienced, but I have every reason to believe they would be competitive. I don't think that we're in trouble.
No, they were definitely criticized. There was some criticism, or at least if not criticism, there was some questioning when they named the team.
Yep.
Because they did make that decision. There were, as you said, some younger players that are on the come-ups that were left off.
Yep.
And, just locally, Renata Fast, Sarah Nurse, all these women are like 34, 35 years old, right?
So they're a little younger than that, but there are players on the team who are 34. Renata and Sarah are younger, but they're late 20s, early 30s.
I thought they were in their 30s. Okay,
but you have Marie-Philippe Poulin. As
sure.
amazing as she
35?
is, she can't play till she's 72.
No.
Eventually, she's going to drop off. And even when Hayley Wickenheiser was still at her best, you get to a point when you start to diminish. So this. I don't know if it was a panic that, okay, we got to win now because we have these players, and so let's keep them around, and we can't take a risk with the younger players because we know what we have. But
or is that just the Canadian thing to do? That we're going to go with the veterans.
Maybe, but that decision has now been made for them. Mm-hmm. That decision has been made for them. There were probably 5 or 6 or 7 players on that team that will not be on the next Olympic team. They just won't.
How long do you think they will take? Because there's World Championships. I would think the next World Championship in a couple of years will probably have the United States as the favorites.
Yes, and I think by then I'd be shocked by then if the Canadian women's team was not dramatically different and much younger by then, because again, you can look at this one of two ways. You can say, okay, we came really close in that gold medal game and looked really good. Or you can say, but we got killed by the Americans every other game. Which was the fluke? The 7 games leading up or the 1 game that wasn't? And if you're an odds maker, you go, you know what? It's probably more likely that that was the best we could play, and that is more who we are.
Right.
You got to change it. You got to change it.
I'm wondering if 4 years from now, because we're so centric and the women's game really has, whether they like it or not, it's the United States and Canada. At some point, Sweden, Finland, Japan, Germany, there will be one other team added to this equation.
Will there? Will there? I'm not positive that there will, and I'll tell you why. The PWHL, I think, is only now going to make the Americans and Canadians stronger. There are some players from other countries on there, but the overwhelming numbers are American and Canadian. So now you've got the NCAA feeding the PWHL, and the vast majority of the players are North Americans, which is only going to make those 2 teams stronger. The one way, and it's the same with any hockey, the one way you're going to see not those 2 teams in a final is going to be if, let's say, Sweden or Finland or someone gets into a semifinal and their goalie turns into the love child of Vladislav Tretiak and Jacques Plante and Eddie Belfour and Patrick Waugh, and plays a game where they stop 65 shots and you can't score on them, which could happen. It has happened in hockey.
There was one woman, I think Finland, Ratti was her name, and there was a couple of times where they played Canada, and they were getting outshot 59 to 15, and it's 2-1.
It happens.
And you're right.
So that's the one. Otherwise, I'd love it to see other teams get in the mix, because look, it's not the same as it was with women's hockey when those other teams got killed every game. They are competitive now, but I just don't see the day coming really, really soon that it's going to change. I think it's still going to be a Canada-US final in most international events.
Canada-USA mirrored itself in the men's game. We all know how that worked out. But to me, the game was so exciting. I don't know how you could feel bad about losing. I think this is one of the times where Canada should be happy to win a silver medal. And I only say that because remember they escaped in overtime and some other on the lead up to it. I think Canada was expected to make the gold medal game. So did the States. But Canada to me seemed a little bit not always there. Regardless, the ending worked out the way it did. We could all argue about 3-on-3. I think that's an obvious answer. I don't think we would even need to talk about it. I think to end a final on 3-on-3.
Okay, let me ask you a question before we carry on.
Okay.
3-on-3. Would you rather have ended it 3-on-3, even though it's not perfect, or do what happened in Nagano where you go to a shootout for a gold medal? I'll take the 3-on-3 every single day of the year.
I'll just play 5-on-5.
I know, but they don't.
Or even I would have done the golden goal, which was 4-on-4.
Yeah. I got no problem. But the Olympics always, the IHF always finds some gimmick or something. Yeah. Next time it'll be turn your sticks over and only play with a knob.
They had a closing ceremonies to get into. I understand why they did it, and they've really confirmed the IHF that it's not changing.
No.
So we got to
put better than a shootout.
Yeah, put up or shut up, and it is better than a shootout. There's no doubt about that. Hey, folks of 1998, remember that Dominic Hasek with Gretzky sitting on the bench. Oh, Mark Crawford, what a mistake.
Well, also, if you want to see maybe the worst shootout attempt in the history of hockey, Brendan Shanahan on that last shot. Skate as fast as you can, and then skate by the net, and don't. Anyway, it was
bad memories. But happy memories for Austin Matthews, the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the likes of a Brady Tkachuk, the captain of the Ottawa Senators, in unique positions. And there was a lot of contempt, a lot of comments made by Canadians in the media, fans, that weren't happy with these two individuals. For one, going to the White House. Two, celebrating the way they did. Some believe they should have automatically reported to their teams at the end of the tournament. Where do you sit on all of this?
It's insanity. It's insanity. We've lost our minds as a country with this stuff. If Canada had won, and the players had come back and met with Mark Carney and had pictures at Parliament and walked into the Parliament buildings, into the House of Commons, and been cheered by the people there and not reported directly to their NHL teams, we would have been fine. We would have been absolutely fine. This is entirely because it's Donald Trump. It's got nothing to do with anything else. It's all about Donald Trump and the fact that there are people who just can't abide the fact that they would spend a moment with the president of their country who happens to be Donald Trump. And, as soon as this stuff started happening, Bubba, the second we started getting these stories and columns and questions and everything else, I immediately went back to when the Boston Bruins won the Stanley Cup about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Maybe more than that now. And Tim Thomas, who was the goalie, did not go to the White House because he did not agree with Barack Obama's policies. Mm-hmm. And you go back, no one has done this. Go back and look at the stories and columns and comments that were made then. He was shredded. And the common theme was, it's got nothing to do with the person holding that position. You are respecting and honoring the office, not the man. Mm-hmm. You are going to the president, you're going to the White House, you're going to the Oval Office. It's not the person who happens to be there. He was killed for that. He was absolutely killed for that. And now, when it's the other way and people don't like the holder of the office, they go, well, you can't go there. He's a maniac. He's this. No, if it's one way, it's the other. Yeah. And look, they're Americans. They won fair and square. Their president invited them to come, and they went. And I honestly see nothing wrong with any of that. Nothing. And I know that we say, well, Donald Trump is against Canada, and he doesn't like Canada. He wants us to be the 51st state. Look, all that stuff. Austin Matthews, because he's the captain of a Canadian team, is supposed to now renounce his American citizenship or his Americanness. Why? We wouldn't expect that of anyone. What if there were Americans saying bad things about, or what if we were Canadians saying bad things about Americans, which, by the way, there are, mm-hmm. and the Canadians had won, and one of our guys was a captain of an American team. Should he have not come? Nobody would suggest that.
Why are we so sensitive to this right now?
Well, Donald Trump. It's about Donald Trump, and it's about the 51st state thing, and it's about the fact that most Canadians hate the guy, and that's fine. You can hate all you want. But there are lots of people, like the presidents have had teams come to the White House for, going back, was Reagan the first? Maybe it was before Reagan. I don't know.
I think it's before.
Might have been before Reagan. I think Reagan might have been the first. Anyway, at no point have we ever demanded, and as I pointed out, the Tim Thomas thing, at no point have we ever demanded that your politics now, you have to choose your side on your politics. We've accepted that you go. We've had women's teams, men's teams, college teams.
We've had NFL teams and NBA teams reject.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, we're not going there.
That's their choice.
Right.
That's their choice. But now the other thing, you've got the team has voted to go, and Austin Matthews is the captain of the team. Is he supposed to say, no, guys, I'm sorry, I'm bailing on you right now?
It's actually a good point, and I think people are forgetting this because, and as I just brought up, teams like the Golden State Warriors who say they're not going, and Sidney Crosby was also criticized when the Penguins won.
And who was the coach? Who was the coach of the Golden State Warriors? The most
Steve Kerr,
progressive, some would say woke left-wing guy who hated Donald Trump. So okay, so you've made that decision, but lots of teams have said no, we're going because it's the office.
But just sorry to stop you there. I think it's different though because those are club teams.
Yeah,
this was Austin Matthews and all these players.
Your club was the United States.
Yes, exactly. So it's a little different than someone in the NFL or the NBA saying, they're representing, I don't know, the Golden State Warriors again. I'll use that again. There were some Philadelphia Eagles that chose not to go, the quarterback, all of that. But then it gets even more complicated, okay? Even more complicated. 15 minutes after they win, the Americans are partying inside their dressing room. Of course they're happy happy. They won the gold medal. The first time since 1980, that Miracle on Ice thing in Lake Placid all those years ago. And then in a conversation with their players, Donald Trump is talking about, and I don't know if these were fatal last words or not, but he said, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that I do believe probably I would be impeached if I didn't invite the women's team. Well, that kind of complicated matters. And of course, a lot of reporters here in Canada are asking these American players that are playing in Canada. Again, I'll use Brady Tkachuk and I'll use Austin Matthews as examples. And I guess the women's team, U.S. women's team, aren't happy. Did Trump kind of blow this a little bit? Are the American men's hockey team having to absorb that comment? Is that fair?
So what Donald Trump said and how he said it is Donald Trump's issue, and the criticism should be leveled at Donald Trump, to me. And I don't know that professional athletes who just won an Olympic gold medal and are in the dressing room celebrating, that our expectation should be that they are now going to parse socio-political, geopolitical statements and other things. Would it have been good if a player had said something? What are you going to say at that moment? When
to the president of the United States.
Like, put yourself in reality as opposed to theoretical world, right? Yes, it would have been lovely for someone to say something else. But is that would you have, if you were sitting there and you're on the phone with the prime minister, forget Donald Trump, you're on the phone with the prime minister who says something to you that you listen, you go, ooh, that doesn't sound exactly like he worded it right. Would you correct him? It was
an entire group laugh. I have to look at it that way. I can't. And remember, a lot of these guys are 21, 22. Like they just won a gold medal. Yes, and again, I'm going to get murdered for this. I just didn't see it at the time as a men versus woman thing, and it's turned into that.
Again, my point just comes back to if you're one of those people who is believing honestly that somebody should have corrected him and said, Mr. President, that's a horrendously offensive thing to say. Would you have honestly, in the heart of hearts, would you have said that at that moment if you were in that position? Honestly. And I don't believe there are almost anybody who would have. I don't believe anybody would have, because it is the president, it is the moment. It's much easier to criticize it afterwards and go, oh, what you should have done. They accepted an invitation to go to the White House, to meet the president, whoever that president is, to go to the State of the Union where they got cheered by everybody in the place.
Yes, they did.
And whether it happens to be the president who delivers the State of the Union, but that was all of representatives of all of America that you were standing in front of. And so, I just find it so difficult to think that somehow these guys have done something wrong.
Should the U.S. women's team feel slighted?
They can, because of that comment.
Right.
But, and I don't know the case. My understanding is that he said that they, have been invited to the White House and he wants to have them there. Whether they go or not, that's again.
Flavor Flav's got a big party for them this weekend.
And that's that's a good. Yeah, so look, it's just some of this stuff. So moving it forward, because the next argument is, so Brady Tkachuk is getting grilled when he gets back to Ottawa now about, how could you have, been, doing this? And Austin Matthews, people are saying Austin Matthews should be traded. Austin Matthews should be ashamed. Austin Matthews, I can never cheer for him again. He was an American wearing USA on his shirt, competing for his country, and when he won, the leader of his country invited him to a celebration. I'm sorry, I fail. We don't demand, I know everyone up here hates Trump, and that's fine, but we don't demand this of other athletes in other countries. Chinese athletes, I'm sure, visit with Xi. People in Russian, when they were in the Olympics, I'm sure they met with Putin.
Yep.
Do we say then, like Alex Ovechkin, on his, I don't know if it's still there, for a long time on Instagram, was a picture of him and Putin. He got a little bit of criticism. Nowhere close to this. No, where were the people saying that Alex Ovechkin should lose his spot on the team, that he should be traded, that he should be, like, it's out of what's the word I'm looking for? It's way out of proportion.
Yeah.
You can be critical, but it's way out of proportion.
I'm stunned. I knew, obviously, because it's, you got this whole geopolitical thing going on, and I thought that would maybe increase some of the interest in the game itself. I just didn't expect the spillover, and maybe it's because we lost.
Of course it is.
That it's bigger than this, because I'm not sure, had we beaten the United States, that Americans that would be reacting
of course
the way
they
we're not. Of
course they wouldn't. And I don't know that there is, like, there's not a comparable to hockey in Canada with this. I mean, what other sport? We're in the World Baseball Classic now. If we got to the finals and beat the Americans.
Basketball, probably. That would be the closest thing.
So let's say we get to the Olympics in basketball, and Canada's got a lot of great players. Now let's say we pull off the miracle of miracles, get into the finals and beat the Americans in the Olympic finals, and we come back here, the players come back here to celebrate with whoever the prime minister is at the time. If it's still Mark Carney, fine. So they're celebrating with Mark Carney in his office, and Mark Carney makes some disparaging comment about the United States, about, we blah blah blah. Do we expect really that they're going to go down there and the people down there are going to say, send Shea Gilgeous-Alexander back home? Get rid of him out of Oklahoma City. He can't play here anymore. He's a lousy representative of us. He sided with the Canadians over us when it mattered the most. Nobody is going to say that. We are being offended at a level that is so out of proportion to what the offense, if there should be any, really should be. They won the championship for the first time in 45 years. They celebrated the championship. Let them. Now, if you're going to criticize Austin Matthews or someone else, criticize what he's been doing with the Leafs, criticize how the team has looked since he's been back, how they've played since the Olympics, that's entirely fair game.
We're going to go there. We are going to go there, but I got one more thing which is so unique to you, and why I'm so happy you chose to join me in this conversation. Everything we've just talked about for the last 20 minutes, all encompassing, has now boiled down to one sort of discussion for me. And my colleague Jason Gaidola and I have spent at least 3 nights discussing this after hours.
Just sitting in the hot tub and sipping a Chablis.
Hanging out in the newsroom, because we're pinned to our seats in the newsroom discussing this. What's happened here? Because we're getting columns being written, and what makes it interesting is because you're a columnist. You're not a reporter. There was a time in your life you were a reporter, but you're a columnist, which is a grade above of that, right?
Well, it's just different. It's different.
But it is. But I think you achieved to be a columnist. That's what I mean. I know you're being gracious here, but I think you achieved to be a columnist after years of working and grinding and being a reporter. And certain columnists in this country and reporters, we talk about Claire Hanna in Ottawa, that are asking questions and are formulating opinions and producing material on media, whether it be television, radio, or in print, like yourself, which there has been an incredible amount of backlash, some agreeing, some not agreeing. What I'm trying to ask you here is this union between journalism and sports reporting. Is there room for them to be together, or in a situation like we're experiencing right now, has it gone mega the wrong way?
Well, so we understand in this country that this is a particularly unique time because we haven't normally, and when I say we, enough Canadians hate the Americans now. And because their leader primarily, but also, it seems to be broader than that. I mean, there were people really, really wanting the Americans to do poorly in the Olympics. That's not just Donald Trump, that's the Americans. And so, there's a variety of things that have got us to this point, but it absolutely complicates things. Look, the columnists are absolutely entitled to their opinions. That's what they're writing them for. They have their opinion. They express it. You can agree, you can disagree. Every day that I write something that's an opinion, that's my opinion. Now it's your turn with it. You read it and you can decide, do I agree with that? Do I disagree with that? again, to me, it's been a lot of almost groupthink. That to me is the part about it that sort of bugs me a little bit. And I'm not criticizing my colleagues. It's just that there's been very little of the other side of it that is what we've been talking about. That is, look, you don't have to like Donald Trump, but you can certainly see why these guys did what they did for the most part. You can completely understand it because athletes have done this for decades and decades before them. And why should they be held to a different standard? And I know some will say, well, because it's Donald Trump. Where this gets really complicated is Tim, and we talked about Tim Thomas. He was like dipping the toe in the pool and got serious blowback. But if we're now coming to the point where we're only going to be allowed to celebrate if the person who celebrates in a position of power is someone with whom we agree. Let's say the next president, whoever that may be, is someone that someone else agrees with, but someone else disagrees with. Well, now, if they didn't go to the Oval Office, are the same people, some of them who are criticizing this, going to be the ones criticizing someone else for not going there?
Right.
Because, well, once you, and this is something we can't get away from now. It's just, it's burned into the DNA of everything. But once you inject politics into sports or entertainment or arts or anything else, it changes how we perceive it. There are, the viewership numbers for things like the Academy Awards now are, why is it? Because half of the country has decided they don't want to spend 3 or 4 hours watching elite celebrities bash them for their political views. They want to watch it if it's about a movie or if it's about the Grammys or something. I'm all in for watching people that I'm interested in as celebrities win awards for movies or music that I love. But when I'm going to tune in and now I have to navigate my way through a political thing, and sometimes I don't agree or I feel like they're just taking shots at me, they tune out. We would be far better off. We're getting a little, well, I don't know if we're getting off track. We would be far better off if we somehow found a way to extract politics from many of these things again, the way it used to be. I don't remember James Cameron's speech, for example, and I'm only picking James Cameron out of the blue. I'm just thinking of Titanic. I don't remember when James Cameron got up to give his best director speech for Titanic, him saying, and by the way, so-and-so, you as a leader suck. Mm-hmm. He got up there, he won his award, everyone had watched Titanic, and we were like, oh, great, or I don't like, but we responded to the event and the art. We used to be able to watch sports and cheer for people. Now, well, if I know that that particular person has a different political view from me, I can't cheer for them anymore, is the thought process.
Wayne Gretzky.
Perfect example. If that guy has once upon a time worn a Make America Great Again hat, well, he must be racist or she must be racist, therefore I can't cheer for that person. On the flip side, if I know that that person voted for some person on the far left and I disagree with that, I can't cheer for that. That to me is silly. It really is. It gets down to a position where it's no longer about cheering for the athlete. It's not about cheering. It's about cheering solely for the politics of it. And where does that get us? When we can only now cheer for the politics. If someone is from a particular state, we want to. The example I've always given, and I don't think I'm wrong on this one. If this was 1980, if social media existed in 1980 like it does, and if we were in the political climate like we are, do you believe that Terry Fox would be a Canadian hero to everyone across this country? I say no, because somewhere along the way, some social media post, even if it was benign, or some photo that Terry Fox took with someone, whether it was just putting his arm around, would be, oh, that person's so-and-so. They're a lefty or they're a righty or they support this or they. Terry Fox, it's inevitable that the man who we hold up as our greatest hero, who was apolitical, would somehow be seen as being on the right side of something or the wrong side of something, and half the country would see him as a hero, and half the country would say, oh, it's Terry Fox. He once upon a time said, I don't believe in absolute immigration. I mean, he didn't.
No. I know what you're saying, though. Yep.
Something
we love tearing down people. Now.
Something would have been pulled out of the past if we had social media and the internet and all these things, and you could never have a national hero again. And I don't know that we ever can in sports or anywhere else, because there's always going to be this division where to one group this person is great, and to this person he's an enemy, and that's where we are right now. That we can't just cheer for sports as sports or movies or music, or everything has been infected with politics.
It really has.
Sorry for the diatribe.
No, and that's why I asked you the question, because I think we're in this really interesting space right now where people are finding, or at least I'm even finding it difficult to make choices somehow, because, yeah, you're right. Like, if I say something, I'm going to offend somebody, or... Anyway, what's been really offensive is the Toronto Maple Leafs and the way they've been playing. And I'm just not talking about this entire season, but there was some type of, and I know these teams are really tough. In Florida, the defending Stanley Cup champion, who are actually who entered last night's game 2 points behind Toronto. Yep. Tampa right now, I mean, they'd won like 20 of their last 22 games. And regardless, the Maple Leafs look poor. They are now 8 points out of the postseason, 23 games to go. Where are we right now? We have the Keith Pelley, the CEO of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, for some strange reason, sending letters to season ticket holders about talking about, where they stand.
We've had a series of unfortunate injuries.
Unfortunate injuries. It's been a series of ups and downs. We're not where we wanted to be. We're committed to all of you guys and winning. Like, there's just the letters, the blah, 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 blah. All the things that you would be shocking were not shocking to me. Now, there's an argument out there saying, what does Keith Pelley know about hockey? He came from golf, the world of European golf. I mean, he's done things at TSN, obviously, but to have him as the face of the Toronto Maple Leafs going forward, what does this team do? I know it's a broad, wide question right now, but there are a lot of criticisms of this team right now that could be in a position to finish last in the East. And then when Mitch Marner sailed to Las Vegas, and then they went and got a couple of players, or 3 players that they thought 3 players are better than 1. There was a thought that Brad Treliving's team, as a general manager, were going to be a playoff team. This may not happen.
It won't happen. After the last 2 games, they're not getting in. They're not getting in, and they should be selling at the trade deadline coming up next week, but I don't know if they will, because they're terrified. This is the thing about the Leafs that I've never understood. This is a fan base that has been through it now for 58 years. If ever there was a fan base where you could be confident, and they're still like close to, if not full, if there was ever a fan base you could be confident would tolerate a rebuild, and we saw that they would when Mike Babcock came.
Yes.
It's this one.
There will be pain.
You don't have to be in a panic to say, oh, we're going to lose. Like, if the Florida Panthers go into a 10-year swoon, forget what they've done the last few years. Did you see some of the game last night? There were a lot of empty seats.
Yep.
A lot of empty seats. You go into a 10-year swoon in Florida, your franchise may be in some trouble. That's not the case in Toronto. And the problem is, what Toronto fans, I don't believe, want, and yet what I think we're heading for, is another decade of being life and death to make the playoffs. Maybe in a good year you get in, and then you get blasted in the first round, and maybe you eke your way into a 1-round win, maybe. But this team looks nowhere close to winning a Stanley Cup. There's no chance. Even if this team got into the playoffs, going back to our discussion about women's hockey, you would need to have one of the goalies go out of his mind. And you would need to have Morgan Riley look like a competent NHL player
what
again.
Has happened to you?
And you would need to have a bunch of guys suddenly look way better. And you'd have to have a team that looks like they have some clue of what they're doing as a team. this team just looks miles away from being. I know that back, was it no, we've lost track now because of the Olympics, a month and a half or so ago when Toronto played Colorado and they won that game.
Yep.
And everyone was like, wow, look at them.
In Colorado.
What do you think the chances are? And even if the Leafs played at their best, what are the chances that in a 7-game series, Toronto wins 4 times against that team?
Impossible.
I would argue that it's pretty close. Nothing's impossible, but it's pretty close.
Yes, you're right.
So the chances that you're going to win a Stanley Cup are tiny. Here's where it gets so troubling, though. You've traded away your first-round draft pick this year, and it's top 5 protected. So if you finish in the bottom 5 in the league or with the lottery, you keep that draft pick. But let's say they finish bottom 5 because they've traded away a bunch of players. Let's say Bobby McMahon and Ekman Larson, and you're trying to get some draft picks in and get younger, and you trade 5 or 6 guys. But that means next year. So you finish low this year the rest of the way. You get your top 5 protected pick. Next year, the pick is unprotected. And now your team is in a rebuilding phase and really young. Now you could be handing Boston the number 1, potentially, theoretically, the Bruins again. Look, I don't know what Keith Pelly's going to do with this team. The first thing he should put in place is on stone tablets, should have etched so no one can do it. We will never make a trade with the Boston Bruins again. Every trade with the Boston Bruins blows up in their face entirely. The Phil Kessel thing, and Tuukka Rask, and it's just a mess.
Gave up a first for Lawton to Philadelphia.
It's a mess. So I think they're terrified of. They've got to finish at least 6th this year from the bottom. Sixth from the bottom. So Boston, they're gonna get a good draft pick. They're gonna get a good draft pick. So we're gonna try and make it so 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th, not 1st or 2nd or 3rd, where we wear this forever. Remember, what was it? Tom Fergus?
No,
was it Fergus for Niedermeyer?
Niedermeyer.
They have a history of this stuff, of overestimating their players, deciding we're going for it. The overestimation blows up in their face, and they've given away the pick that would have helped them rebuild. So they're in a bind, because if they trade away a bunch of guys now to rebuild, you probably do finish low, and then you could be really, really, really screwing yourself.
All right. Well, then where do you place your level of the blame game? Let's play the blame game. Where do you put your level of blame here? The general manager in Treliving, the head coach, or even Austin Matthews.
Yes, and all the other players. It's a sport involving athletes. Ultimately, see, I do it in the reverse order from you, but I put them all in that category. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it's the athletes who, anyone who watched them last night, they were the most disinterested looking group of people in the history of sports. They looked terrible. And even if they didn't win, your playoff hopes are hanging by a thread. You come out and you at least give an effort, at least look like you're trying to play the team game that Berube has to have been preaching. This can't be what Berube's been practicing, and it was just all over that. Everyone man for himself. So
I think the first period they were down 3-0, and at time outshot 18-3.
It was ridiculous. And this is at a crucial moment.
First period.
Yeah, and they've been off for a month, most of them, except for a couple of guys. So I put it on the players primarily, and then secondarily Berube. Although the coach, it's one of those things I don't really know. Has he been preaching all the right stuff and the players are just ignoring him? So I'll go, it's the players mostly or Berube mostly. They're both in there, but either they're ignoring him or he doesn't have any clue what he's doing.
What if his style isn't meshing with the kind of players that
we've been saying that for years, though. That the previous guy's style didn't mesh. You can't.
But then there's weird decisions like
Yes.
you drafted a guy like Easton Cowan,
and then don't play him after a month.
And don't play him.
Yeah, he hasn't played for a month.
He's young and exuberant and fun and creative.
I don't know the answer to this, but could he not have gone down to the Marlies?
Yes, he could have, and they didn't do that. They realized, oops, we screwed up there.
There is just this.
What's happening?
So I was born 5 months after the Leafs last won a Stanley Cup. I have not been alive for a Leafs Stanley Cup. I've not been alive to see the Leafs play in the finals.
Me neither.
Like this, you can see we've got a few miles under the treads. I have not been alive to see them make the final. And the amazing part about it is, with very, very few in that time, very few blips of competence, primarily the Leafs find ways to bring in guys who appear to not know what they're doing or knew what they were doing elsewhere and get here and forget to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You bring in general managers who make absolutely stupid, incredibly boneheaded moves. When they get here and elsewhere, they're fine. You pass on other guys. You make trades. Like there is a curse on this franchise. There is no other explanation for it.
Curse, come on.
That for 60 years almost, for 6 decades, anybody who comes here, with very few exceptions, Wendell Clark stood out, of course, Doug Gilmour, there's other ones, Austin Matthews, but very few guys, whether in management or on the ice, come, put on the Leaf jersey and become a better version of themselves than they were elsewhere. There are some, but it's very few. Last night in the game, listening, and I didn't watch it right to the end, but I think it was Mike Johnson, I think the guy who was doing the color. He made a comment about, he was talking about a few of the Florida players and about how they were nothing and they get to Florida and they become these absolutely integral, vital pieces of the puzzle. They fit, they got it. The light bulb goes on. When guys come to Toronto, the light bulb goes off. Or you get some weird injury. So you had, who was the Columbus captain who was traded here a few years ago, right at the trade deadline, and blew out his knee in like the first game.
Oh my goodness!
I'll think of it in a minute.
Foligno.
Yeah. Ryan
Clarkson.
Clarkson.
He came here disaster.
He comes here first game, jumps out of the penalty box to join a fight and never recovers and never finds his game.
Suspended.
From St. Louis, you had the center. I'm drawing all blanks on the name. I must be in Olympic mode here, but and plays okay.
Ryan
O'Reilly plays pretty well, but
couldn't wait to get out of here.
And wasn't as good as he'd been in St. Louis. Played fine. He was okay, but didn't become now Super Ryan.
Had a hat trick in Buffalo. I remember it.
Who are the guys? And I bet we could probably sit here and name.
Well, just recently, the guys that were acquired, they were really happy to give up a first rounder for Scott Lawton.
Yep.
He has been. I feel sorry for the guy.
Okay, so
I mean, Brandon Carlo can't stay healthy, right? Like,
if we were to come up with a list, honestly, of 20 guys, 25, I'll give you 25 guys that you could think of, and I'm not just currently, I'm talking as far back as you want to think, who came to Toronto and were better here than anywhere else they played. I'm not sure we'd come up with 25. It would be a struggle.
No.
Meanwhile, you do this over the years with Montreal or Detroit or Florida or Tampa. Now you can start going down the list. You could find tons of guys, a different environment, they suddenly turn it on. But how come the Toronto environment, and I don't just mean the city, I mean the Leafs organization with all the money and the coaches and everything, how come the environment, guys don't come here and become superstars, but for, again, guys like Doug Gilmour did it, Dave Andreychuk did it. There are guys.
It's only for short times, though.
It's not a long list, and it's not a long time.
Even Dougie wore it as welcome and got traded.
And then Gilmour comes back. Remember what happened? Doug Gilmour comes back here. First period, blows out his knee. It's like when I say it's a curse, I don't actually believe in sports curses, but it's a weird.
Well, I'm sorry. I got to get into this curse thing again here because it seems so weird to me because I'm going to bring it back to modern day, where we are right now, just recent times. And the two biggest stars in Toronto hockey over the last number of years have been Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. They're the best players, the best players they've had in a decade, I would say.
Since Matt Sundin.
Since Matt Sundin,
Yeah.
okay? But then I will use this. I will look at examples of Austin Matthews being named the captain for the second big tournament for Team USA. And since winning the gold medal, I've heard both Tkachuks talk about what a great leader he was, how much fun it was to be with him. I heard Getzel say the same thing, that he was our leader. All of this stuff. I think of like Marner and what he's done and what he's doing in Vegas, and they're having their struggles or whatever. But I remember Marchand talking about, I don't know what's going on in Toronto. You guys ran him out of town. You guys don't realize what a great hockey player this is. Why are other players around the league, standing up for these Toronto Stars, and yet Toronto Maple Leaf Stars and this general area that we live in are bashing and have bashed these two players? It's a weird dynamic.
It is, although it's interesting when you mention Marner and Matthews. Both of those guys, the fan base and the media, everyone in Toronto, was ready to make them the heroes of heroes. When they got drafted and they came along and it's 10 years of endless failure. They won 2 playoff rounds. There are probably 20 NHL teams that won 2 playoff rounds in a season in that time period. They won 2 playoff rounds. So I don't blame the fans or the media for criticizing those guys and their leadership and their performance in big games when there is literally no history for them to lean back on. Austin Matthews saying, now I'm captain of Team USA and we won. Great. Where was any of that with the Leafs? Where has been any of that with the Leafs? I get why people ask the question. I get why people are critical. They are justified to be critical because these guys that do things elsewhere, as I just said, don't do it here. They don't do it here. So Austin Matthews might be the greatest leader of men since Mark Messier in an NHL dressing room. But he hasn't done that here. What's the evidence that that's been the case here? We've talked about this, I think, on this podcast before. Where is the evidence of Austin Matthews making someone else better around him or driving someone else to be better? Or you just don't.
Is it his fault when he turns to his right on the power play and Max Domi is his right winger?
No.
Come on.
But he had Mitch Marner. And he's had other guys in the playoffs. He's had good players in the playoffs over those 9 years that he's been here. He's been on a line with Marner. He's had Tavares playing with him at times, and Nylander at times. He's had other players. And there are lots of teams where guys don't have Olympic quality first lines, and the guy still dominates. Connor McDavid has been that guy every year for the Oilers. They haven't won, but they've been to the finals 2 years in a row, and McDavid has been great. Draisaitl has been great. In the playoffs, they have been so different from Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. So I get the criticism, and I get that two things can be true at once. Austin Matthews may have been dynamic in that room, but he isn't in Toronto. And I'm going to take one more thing. I know we're running late here, but one more thing about this. As I'm sitting here thinking about it, I don't know that it's just the Leafs curse. It may be the whole Toronto curse.
Oh, you're back on this again.
No, because you've got that example. But the greatest players in Raptors history, it ended poorly. Vince Carter, Lowry wasn't exactly, he came back and it was not as bad, but it wasn't a glorious ending.
Lowry got his championship with Kawhi.
I understand that. Kawhi, gone immediately. DeRozan wasn't too happy about it. One of probably the greatest player in Blue Jays history, Robbie Alomar. That wasn't a fault of the team. That was a thing, but still not even on the wall or the level of excellence anymore. Roy Halladay leaves the team. It's amazing in the Toronto sports market how few guys who were the best of the best of the best finish still in the good graces and still looking like the good guys. There's always this.
I can't believe there's a curse.
Yeah, there's no curse. There's no curse, but I'm at a loss to come up with any other explanation, so I'll go with curse because there's something. I just don't know what it is.
Scott, has been awesome. Great discussion. Again, I really appreciate your opinion and your thoughts on some of the more controversial things, or things that really have got the nation all stirred up when it comes to sports and politics. So I thought you were the perfect person to talk about this, because it really is a major topic of discussion right now. So again, you got a free pass to the seat all the time whenever you want to come in.
All right. I will. It's very comfortable. I might stay here tonight.
All right. Thanks for coming in.
See ya.
All right. That's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And if you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports. Boy, it has been hot conversation recently. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast want to hear from you. There has to be better athletes than the Maple Leafs, right? Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. If you have something to say, always appreciate your comments. Please comment on all the stuff we've been talking about. It's been wild. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow. Maybe.